Good morning. My name is Ruli Weller-Passman, and I use they, them pronouns. And I'd like to begin with a question. Which flavor of ice cream do you like? Chocolate or vanilla? I promise this isn't the beginning of a Dora the Explorer episode, nor unfortunately do I have tubs of ice cream waiting for you after the service. Nevertheless, take a minute to think about your answer. Many of you probably do, in fact, prefer one of the options that I presented. But for some of you, I wonder if you're thinking, but my favorite flavor of ice cream isn't chocolate or vanilla, it's strawberry or mint chocolate chip. Maybe a few of you don't like ice cream and would rather have cake or cookies. A few of you might not like sweets at all. In my first visit to UUCSC, Reverend Rick spoke about envisioning Unitarian Universalism as a place to share brunch. Well, today I want to invite you to the dessert bar of pride. And I apologize in advance because you're going to be sick of this analogy by the end of my section. But I know LGBT terminology can seem confusing at best and overwhelming at worst, and I wanted to try a different way of clarifying a few key definitions. So you can probably connect the dots on how sexual orientation relates to my ice cream analogy. Let's say chocolate ice cream represents women and vanilla ice cream represents men. Which do you feel drawn to? Your choice, your preference, determines your sexual orientation, straight or gay, lesbian. Some people like both flavors, which makes them bisexual. Now let's talk about gender identity. This is where it can be easy to get confused. Many people don't understand the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. So, to extend my metaphor, let's pretend that each one of us is a dessert store of some kind. Some of us are bakeries, and some of us are ice cream parlors. Each of us was purpose-built for one type of sweet. And for most of us, that's fine. We like whatever dessert we were built to sell. It fits. But for a few of us, the dessert that we were designed for doesn't fit, and never has. We are bakeries who long for the air-conditioned summer chill of ice cream parlors. We're ice cream parlors who know we were meant to host wedding cake dreams. Or maybe we're bakeries or ice cream parlors who know we aren't suited for sweets at all. We should be grocery stores, barbecue joints, fish markets. This, friends, is gender identity. It isn't just what body you have and the box it fits into. It's something deeper, a bone-deep knowing of yourself. For many people, that knowing, that inner self, matches the body they were born into. But for those of us in the trans community, we are people who know ourselves to be different or broader or more variable than the body we were born into. Now, I don't expect you to remember all of this or suddenly be an expert on LGBTQ plus terminology. But I hope at least that this analogy has helped clarify the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. Sexual orientation is who I'm attracted to. Gender is who I am, how I view my inner self. In a way, an overly simplistic one, orientation is more external and gender is more internal. They impact each other, of course, but they're also unique from each other. In our analogy, you could say that I was built as a bakery. I grew up not knowing any different or knowing that there were other possibilities for what a store could be. During college, though, I slowly realized that my inner self had never been a bakery or an ice cream parlor. If we're thinking of buildings, I think I'd call myself a craft store. Full of possibility, excited to try on different trappings sometimes, but always someplace outside of the dessert shop world. That's why I use they, them pronouns. I don't feel masculine or feminine, so he, him, and she, her feel wrong. Not just wrong, they make me feel invisible. Like my inner self must stay quiet and still while the world acknowledges only the outer facade of my body and the expectations attached to it. The thing is, though, I don't expect you to know this just by looking at me. Nor do I expect you to effortlessly pick up my pronouns. They, them can feel clunky and awkward at first, and that's okay. I messed up my own pronouns when I first made the switch. The most important thing to me isn't that you'd never slip up, it's that you're willing to try. I have so much patience and grace for mistakes if they come from a place of genuine effort. It's when people shut me down that I feel invisible. To illustrate, I'd like to share a story from my own life. I have a really small family, and I grew up very close with my maternal grandparents and my Aunt Jay. That said, if I was going to butt heads with anyone in the family, it was going to be my maternal grandmother, who we call Grandmama. While incredibly loving and generous, Grandmama is also very Lutheran, very Republican, and can have very rigid views about right and wrong. By comparison, Aunt Jay is politically left-leaning and a practicing Wiccan. She encouraged me to explore my personal sense of style from a young age, and it's Aunt Jay who first sparked my interest in Wicca and witchcraft. Around Aunt Jay, I always felt like I could be unabashedly myself. Around Grandmama, I was a bit cautious. Fast forward to college, when I discovered my queer identity. I'm incredibly fortunate that my parents and brother were unquestionably supportive from day one. As I prepped to come out to my extended family, I was a little uneasy about my grandparents. I knew they wouldn't disown me, but would they try to pretend like nothing had changed, ignore the new name and pronouns I'd chosen? It never occurred to me to worry about Aunt Jay, though. She'd always supported my exploration and growth. Well, Aunt Jay took it poorly. She shut down. When my mom tried to intercede on my behalf and asked Jay to start using my pronouns, Aunt Jay snapped that I was too out and proud and I shouldn't expect her to change her behavior to suit me. Years later, after I'd been going by Ruth for ages already, she still slipped up and used my birth name. When I tried to gently correct her, she jumped down my throat. The outcome is that I'm no longer comfortable advocating for my identity and needs with her, which means I'm no longer comfortable with her. I see her with the rest of the family once or twice a year. She twists her sentences into pretzels to avoid using any pronouns for me. And to this person I idolized as a kid, who taught me about magic and self-expression, I feel invisible. Now, compare this to my grandparents. My Fox News-watching, Missouri Synod Lutheran grandmother immediately worked on changing from calling me by my birth name to my new one, as soon as I asked. She doesn't get my pronouns, and that's still hard for me sometimes. But I know that underneath it all, Grandmama wants me to be who I am. She doesn't get it, but she knows she doesn't have to get it to support me. That makes all the difference. At the end of the day, she still wants to see me for who I am. To return to us in this room today, I share this story for two reasons. One is to help you see the real struggle of speaking your truth as a trans person. And mine is such a low-level story of trans pain. Most of my trans friends have been rejected in some way by at least one parent. Not some of them, most. And that's not to mention the very real danger of violence, especially for trans women of color. In 2023, at least 33 trans and gender nonconforming folks were killed in America. Some people will literally try to wipe our existence out through violence or through oppressive legislation. As hard as it's been to lose Aunt Jay for me, I'm absolutely one of the luckier ones, and I try to never take that for granted. Secondly, though, I share this story to illustrate that we are all complicated, unpredictable beings, and all we can do for each other is our best. I expected my aunt to be wholeheartedly accepting of my non-binary gender identity, and I worried that Grandmama would have reservations. Both of these family members surprised me, and it isn't because one of them used my pronouns perfectly from the beginning. Grandmama still doesn't. But all she has to do is genuinely try. I can't speak for the whole trans community, but for me, at least, the only way to do pronouns wrong is to never start in the first place. If anyone in this room has ever felt trepidation when a friend or family member mentioned their preferred pronouns, I promise you don't have to be perfect at it. Just try. Own the mistakes when they inevitably happen. Offer a brief apology, then continue forward with the correct pronouns, as many times as it takes. The queer community has so much to offer mainstream culture, and more specifically, so much to offer the world of spirituality. One of my theology heroes, Reverend Elizabeth Edman, argues that queerness has the power to challenge the status quo and to remind us of the fluid ineffability of our universe. She writes, "Queer individuals are called to perceive a truth inside of themselves, name it as identity marker, reckon with it, tell the truth about it, even in the face of hostility, find others who perceive a comparable identity marker, and build community for the betterment of all of us. In my faith tradition, we refer to this as a call. It is a vocation." Edman, and as she argues, the queer community as a whole, issues a call to all of us. It is not a call to perfection, but a call to multifaceted, non-binary, messy community of humans who see each other for our authentic selves. Will you answer that call? Well, we are Unitarian Universalists after all. If we preferred straightforward definitions, I don't think any of us would be in this space today.